What's up guys, it's Graphic Phoenix back with another video today, and today we have stumbled upon the world of dart frogs and naturalistic setups. So what's really the goal of a naturalistic setup? I mean, when you think about it, all you're really doing is trying to recreate a rainforest. The most crucial part of a rainforest is of course the substrate. Without it, we wouldn't have a rainforest. That's what we're going to discuss today, is how to build a substrate suitable for a living vivarium. First thing we're going to discuss is good versus bad substrates. Now what we're going to talk about first is the bad substrates. The qualities of a bad substrate are it's settling over time, meaning that it compacts very quickly. It is extremely fast drying. Along with being fast drying, if it stays too moist, it becomes sour and begins to rot away. Now with this extremely saturated environment, it allows for stagnant water to build, and fungi, anaerobic bacteria specifically, builds up in the soil and is what is actually producing the gross smell in your tank. Now there are a couple big no-nos to substrate, and these are definitely things that you're going to want to address in your mix. A big mistake when choosing your substrate for your vivarium is choosing a substrate that promotes the stagnant water. Now don't worry, this is an extremely common mistake, and a lot of people make this when making their first vivarium, especially if they don't do enough research, but that's why I'm here for you guys. Improper soil choice include all of the following choices. That is coconut coir or fiber all alone. You do not want to use that only in your vivarium. You don't want to use potting soil like you see here. You don't want to use peat moss as you see here, because they all compact very, very easily. As you can see, the peat moss is in a brick right now, and it's extremely hard to rehydrate. Not only does it compact very easily, it breaks down quite quickly all alone. So these are all factors that will play into that anaerobic environment, which means lack of oxygen, and promotes anaerobic bacteria growing in your tank. Now something people commonly mistake is when they're looking at peat moss or potting soil or coconut coir, they look and it says organic, and they think, oh man, that's organic, there's no pesticides or anything in there. That's not true. Even in organic media, you don't know what they're adding in there. Whether it's peat moss or potting soil and something was brought into the mix during the processing, that's something nobody will be able to tell, and it's still listed as organic. So now switching from the bad, we can do basically the opposite in making a good substrate. So what are qualities of a good substrate? Firstly, you definitely want to smell an earthy smell. For those of you that have built vivariums before successfully, or are gardeners and produce your own compost and stuff like that, that's the smell you're going for. A very nice earthy smell. Other qualities include it lasting a long time. There shouldn't be media that breaks down over a year. It should be several year-long breakdown process until it's basically a fine composted material. It should also resist compaction, so meaning it has a nice airy texture. It's not going to solidify into a hard block if you soaked it and then let it dry. It will still be nice, malleable, and plenty of area available for root growth. So what are a couple examples of this so-called good vivarium mix? Now, I think probably the most common in the hobby is ABG mix. That stands for Atlanta Botanical Gardens mix. This mixture was essentially created to mimic that soil of the tropical rainforests and resist compaction, resist breaking down, and produce a very nutrient-rich soil for your vivariums. The recommended AGB mix by N.E. Herps is 2 parts tree fern, 1 part sphagnum moss, 1 part coconut coir, 2 parts orchid bark or fir bark, and 1 part charcoal. Now, tree fern is getting hard to find. They're starting to find alternatives to this. Now, I use primarily a little bit extra fir bark in my mix, just something that's airy and will provide a lot of drainage. Now, you can use like pumice stone, but I know in the States sometimes it's hard to find. I know in Canada we actually have quite a lot of it for some weird reason. Now me personally, I use my own mixture. I have been recently experimenting with the ZooMed Rainforest mix. Of course I modify it and add my own stuff. Essentially what I'm adding to mine is coconut coir, coconut bark or coconut chips or coconut husk. That will add to the earthiness. It also breaks down over quite some time. I also add charcoal to mine, as well as a bunch of fir bark. You guys can see the ingredients all right now. There are fir bark or orchid bark, there is charcoal, there is more coconut husk, and plantation soil. Occasionally, if I have a little bit of tree fern just kind of sitting around, I do mix that in just because it does add a lot of earthiness to the soil and it takes a long time to break down. So if you have it available, you certainly can use the tree fern. So now something that a lot of people don't realize right off the bat is that this whole vivarium substrate will actually be living. You can either add microfauna or you don't have to, but I know even in my old vivariums where I didn't have springtails and isopods, there were springtails and little bugs and insects that live in the soil after some time of being moist and providing a good environment for those kind of creatures. Now that you know that the vivarium is actually living, the substrate itself will have insects or invertebrates living in it. Something you should also keep in mind, and you don't have to add this, they will colonize over time, but nitrifying bacteria actually is extremely beneficial in your vivarium substrate. Colonies of nitrifying bacteria are commonly found around the roots of plants because they play a crucial role in basically bringing decaying matter and making it accessible to plants via breakdown of nutrients and assimilation into the roots. Now we can really dive into the microfauna. This is, again, like I said earlier, a crucial part to your vivarium success. The first of which is springtails. Now these are those little white hoppy dudes that bounce around when you blow on them, but these little white specks are going to be extremely important in your vivarium. Now, these guys are detritivores, so they basically get nutrients from decaying organic matter. So they'll be eating mold, decaying plant matter, as well as a certain amount of feces and waste coming from the inhabitants of your vivarium. Not only are they very useful for adding to your vivarium based on the health of the vivarium, tiny little froglets and baby frogs will be eating these guys like crazy. So it is definitely important if you're having like a grow out tank that you have several cultures of springtails going, as well as seed the tank and let it grow for about a month before you begin adding frogs to the tank, because they will decimate the springtail population very quickly. Not to fear, it is definitely healthy for the frogs and will lead to very strong little babies. So next thing we're going to talk about is seeding your vivarium. Now, seeding, as you guys may have heard before, is kind of the term of adding your microfauna, springtails, isopods, whatever, to your vivarium. Now for springtails, there's a couple different ways you can do this. They are hydrophobic, meaning that they float on water. So some people will actually fill their springtail cultures with water and dump them into the tank, which is definitely an effective way of doing it. It works very well. Another way of doing it is basically by adding little chunks of whatever media you have, whether it be cocoa husk or charcoal, into the vivarium itself. Now this is very useful when maybe your culture is a little bit slow to start. There's not a ton of springtails in there. However, it's also useful on the other spectrum when your culture is doing amazing and there's tons of springtails everywhere, because you don't really have to worry about diminishing the population too much. Now typically seeding the vivarium should be done about a month before you add any macrofauna, meaning lizards, geckos, dart frogs, whatever, just to let the inhabitants move into the area and start reproducing. Typically that can take anywhere from 3 to 5 weeks. So now that is transitioning away from springtails, and we get into isopods. Now these are the roly-polies, the pill bugs, the whatever synonym you have for them. That's what they are. They're an invertebrate, and they will clean your vivarium. So these are coined the janitors of the vivarium. These guys will be eating mostly waste, breaking down organic matter, will eat sheds if you have a gecko or something that sheds, a reptile of some kind. The isopods will be the members of that crew who clean the macro debris up. There are several species of isopods commonly available in the hobby. There is dwarf white, dwarf purple, dwarf gray, and giant orange. These are the very common ones that you'll find at most online retailers. I know Any Herps has them. I know Glassbox Tropicals. I don't know if Black Jungle Terrarium Supply sells them or not, but those are 3 or 4 kind of good vivarium websites that you guys can check. There are also some other common or not so common ones, more designer isopods that you can get. There's Spotted or Dalmatian. There's blue, powder blue ones. There's some like very metallic-y, silvery ones. There's a couple different ones that you can get. However, these alternatives are A, more expensive, and B, almost more of a pet project rather than something that you want to throw in your vivariums and watch your dendrobates eat up and just cry as you watch like $2 to $3, $4, $5 bills disappear from your terrarium. Moving away from the microfauna, we move on to the last component. Leaf litter is extremely important for your vivarium substrate. It is a top dressing. You can also break it up and mix it in if you like, but it's commonly used as a top dressing to the actual soil base. So why is leaf litter so important anyways? It's important for a couple different reasons. One, it is used as hiding spots for microfauna and macrofauna, so anything from springtails to other beneficial microbes to isopods all use the leaf litter to hide and avoid being prey to something else like your frogs. However, there are several species of frogs that actually will hide in the leaf litter as well, and it definitely makes them feel more secure if they have somewhere to bound into to get out of line of sight. The second reason it's important is actually as a food source. Your isopods will eat it, the springtails will eat the mold and whatnot created by the leaves, and it will feed a healthy environment. Over time, the decaying matter in the leaves will actually be broken down and incorporated into the soil. Now, this is something that occurs over months, like 8, 10, 12 months. That's a couple reasons why the leaf litter is very important. There are a couple different kinds of leaf litter that you can find. Commonly available, you'll find magnolia leaves and oak leaves. However, I know I've seen some Theobroma cacao, which is basically cocoa trees, or the tree that produces a seed pod, which cocoa is made from. That wraps up the video, you guys. I hope everybody enjoyed and was able to learn something about the magical world of vivarium substrates. It's something that you're not likely going to hit on your very first try unless you really do your research and follow through with things. But over time, you definitely get to feel out your own mixes and kind of see where you want to go with your own vivarium substrates. Over several vivariums, I've kind of refined my mix that I like, so that's what I'm going to be using from here on out. I hope you guys can follow that advice as well. So if you guys enjoyed the video, I want you guys to click the like button down below. If this helped you out in any way, shape, or form, definitely let me know in the comment section down below. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything of that matter, I can definitely answer it in the comments. If you guys liked the video and you want to see more of my kind of stuff, I have plant, reptile, dart frogs, all kinds of different material on my channel, all related to nature, all really fun. So I want to thank you very much for watching. If you want to subscribe, there'll be a little blue orb over here. You can click that even on mobile. Up top here, there'll be my last video I posted, and on the bottom here is a video recommended for you. So thanks for watching, you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. Graphic Phoenix, out of here.